So I'd like to introduce Kelly, who joins us to present today. We're very excited to have her. She has worked as a recycling coordinator for the City of Minneapolis for 9 years. Her primary job duties include program development and outreach for the city's residential waste reduction, reuse, recycling, and organics programs. She was involved in the development of the city's zero waste plan, green to go packaging ordinance, and bring your own bag ordinance. Kelly initiated the development of the Minnesota Composting Council, the official state chapter of the US Composting Council, and serves on its board of directors. She is very passionate about waste reduction and educating residents to take steps to reduce their environmental impacts. So Kelly, I'll turn it over to you, and thanks again for joining us.
All right, so first of all, for those of you who don't know solid waste and recycling, by city ordinance, we provide collection services to all residential buildings in Minneapolis that are 1 to 4 units. We collect all of the things on the screen here and have a clean city programs that try and provide volunteer opportunities for people to help keep litter off the streets, remove graffiti from property. And I should note that city staff pick up from half of the city, and we have a contractor, a consortium of small haulers that pick up from the other half of the city, but all education and outreach comes from our office. So as far as recycling is concerned, it is not mandatory in Minneapolis that people have or participate in recycling. About 97% of our customers do have a cart, and our contamination rate, or things that never should have been put in the cart in the first place, is 10.59%. You can see on the slide there that's up from 9.32% in 2019. 2 things I will add: there is a change in the way contamination was calculated between 2019 and 2020. Ooh, that might be really old numbers. No, I think that's right. I don't know why I have 2019 on there. I think that should say 2020 and not 2019. So there's a change in the way that contamination was calculated, and if we did calculate it the same way, we would actually have seen a slight reduction between 2020 and 2021 as a year. Most important things for recycling: never, ever, ever put plastic bags in recycling carts. Same thing with metal items. Yes, all metal can be recycled, but the recycling facility is only designed to be able to sort out your food, beverage, laundry, bathroom type containers, and then papers that have not come in direct contact with food. With recycling, because they are able to pull contaminants out before it goes off to a processor, we say, when in doubt, find out. You can use the city's website, you can go to Eureka Recycling, you can pretty much Google whatever it is you're trying to get rid of with how to get rid of it, and there will be lots and lots of answers for you. It is important to note that waste is incredibly local, so what you hear or what is recyclable here, you want to be looking for local sources for answers to that information. And the question people always have, well, there's many questions people always have, but a fun tip to remember which plastic numbers can go in your recycling cart. If you hold your hand up, put your middle finger and ring finger down. This is the I love you sign in sign language. And counting from your thumb, you have 1, 2, and 5. So 1, 2, and 5, no black plastics. They're not able to be sorted, and no plastic bags. All right, then going on to organics. Organics recycling also not required in Minneapolis. We had a pilot program back in 2018, and we, over the course of many years with consultant studies, we opened up drop-offs. We finally rolled out a citywide organics program in 2016. It is an opt-in program, so everyone does pay to have the service, but they do have to let us know they want a cart in order to get it. We chose to do it that way because that simple act of signing up is kind of like the commitment card saying that they want to do it right. And we do have a very, very low contamination rate in recycling. It's right around 1%. So you saw contamination recycling is over 10%, which is still very good as far as a large city what people perceive to be harder, that being the composting organics recycling program, has lower contamination than regular recycling. All of our organics, when they're picked up, they go to the Malcolm transfer station, which is right over by the Surly Brewery off of University and 280. And from there, they get put in a semi truck and are hauled out to SET's Empire composting facility in Rosemount. So we're sending the one larger vehicle the farther driving distance to get that material composted. The organics program did win the US Composting Council's Program of the Year award in January of 2019. So anyone who participates in the city's program can give themselves a nice little pat on the back for doing what's right and putting only the right items in. For organics, most important thing, food service items. If they do not have that BPI logo on them, they should not be going in the organics cart. So things labeled biodegradable, made from plants, oxo-degradable, any of those weird terms, they are not accurate. I mean, there is nothing preventing a manufacturer from being able to put those claims on products. And BPI is a third party who scientifically tests items to make sure they are going to fully and safely break down in the composting process. So with recycling, if you don't know, when in doubt, find out. With organics, it is when in doubt, throw it out, because none of the contaminants can be removed prior to the composting process. It's only after the active composting, when materials are screened, that they can get some of those contaminants out. And anything that has a plastic lining on it, so like your standard coffee, paper coffee cup, or like a milk carton, the microbes in the compost will eat the paper and leave behind a snake skin of plastic. And any little bits that are missing or that are too small to be screened out just end up being microplastics in the compost. Another fun thing we do here is we pick up large items regularly from residents. I only wanted to share these slides, and I'll go through them real quick because I find it fascinating. But residents get, as part of their fees for service, can set out up to 2 large items a week. Recyclable large items can only go out on recycling week. And in the city of Minneapolis, we pick up a shipping container worth of electronics. So this is what you'd see on a rail car every 3 days. That is how many electronics we pick up from people's homes. It is quite crazy. Electronics go down to dynamic recycling, where they get recycled. Dynamic is in Onalaska, Wisconsin. Mattresses get recycled by Emerge. And then the appliances and things that are mostly metal go back to our field office, where we have staff if they require some form of processing. So this picture in the lower right-hand side, you see we're moving the metal from a hide-a-bed. We think of hide-a-beds as kind of a 2-for-1 because we get to recycle the mattress and we also get all of this metal out of there. The rest of the couch is going to end up at the HERC, the waste energy facility in downtown. They do remove Freon, and I think we have like 6 or 7 different grades of Freon that are removed. They pull circuit boards out, and then all of the appliances and the metal items go to various scrap metal recyclers in the area to be recycled. So how do we share this information with our residents? Some of the more fun and exciting things that we do, like I am here with you today, we will go to pretty much any neighborhood and community event we are asked to go to. We have found that the verbal communication is incredibly effective. You know, someone calls or uses the website and gets a simple answer of yes or no, you can or can't recycle an item. That's not really that informative or exciting, not really something people are necessarily going to remember. But if you get people to events like this, or you talk to them at an educational table, they get to know some of the greater detail. They find it fascinating and they share it with their friends, family, and neighbors. We have a recycling block leader program, which is really absolutely nothing more than for the people who want the super detailed information, is an option for them to get that information. And then again, we request that they share it with their friends, family, and neighbors. Being that, you know, oftentimes people may not want to listen to the government or hear from the government. So hearing it from a friend is, you know, more of a trusted source for you. So for the people who want the info, we want to find a way to get it to them. And then we do offer tours of facilities. We have a every other month tour of the recycling facility. There is both a virtual and now an in-person option. And then once a year in the spring, we hire a bus to drive people down to the composting facility where we do tours of SET so people can see how their food scraps become beautiful compost. We also do lots and lots of campaigns. You may have seen some of these out and about. These are two really big campaigns around the organics program, using lots and lots of different methods, from digital media platforms to neighborhood newspapers to radio ads to metro transit buses. We've tried just about everything at this point. We also did a Recycle Smart campaign with Hennepin County and the City of St. Paul. It's actually the first time in probably over 20 years that the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul went together on a campaign like this. And through this campaign, we saw a 1.35 reduction in the contamination of recycling. So some people were seeing it, and the City of St. Paul actually continued the campaign into the next year as well. So all of these diversion efforts that we do, we're doing for a couple of reasons. One, it's the right thing to do. Two, we're trying to meet city and state goals. So the state increased the recycling and composting goal for the metro region back in 2015 to be 75% of total material collected. And then the city, and here's the best part, the city said we can do better than the state. No science behind it, although I should back up and say the state had no science behind their 75% goal either. So the city adopted an 80% recycled or composted by 2030 goal. And I will note, for the city, it does specify city-wide waste. So it's not just the residential sector, which is what the pie chart is there that you see. And that is the 2021 breakdown for the residential weight picked up by solid waste and recycling. Big challenges is that we don't really get good data from the commercial sector or from institutions or multi-units. So even just the act of collecting the data to find out where we are towards meeting those goals is quite challenging. And then you've got all sorts of fun things like, you know, COVID coming in, and how many of you got bored sitting at home at COVID and decided I'm going to clean my whole house and get rid of the things I no longer want? Well, that was pretty much everyone. We saw a huge increase in total waste over COVID. And thankfully that has come back down. And thankfully, I'll talk about this in a little bit, that it seems people are kind of valuing what they have a little bit more. But this whole weight-based goals, and these 75 and 80% are weight-based targets, don't really make sense when the ultimate goal is to not produce waste in the first place. So think about, you know, everyone got newspapers delivered to their home, and now that's all switched over to digital, or things like phone books. Well, you've now taken a large weight of what goes in that recycling portion of the pie out of the pie entirely, but what's in the trash never changed. So your amount recycled decreases, which makes your recycling rate go down, but by reducing that waste, you've actually done something better for the environment. So weight-based goals are really, really challenging. The only other really great way to kind of gauge how you're doing is to evaluate a capture rate. And so essentially that would be saying, of 100% of newspaper, what percentage ended up in the correct cart? And we actually just completed a residential capture rate study a couple months ago. The final reports will be coming out soon. But that's a better way to say how much of what we have is ending up where it's supposed to. Another big challenge, funding and staffing. On the city side, we've been so short-staffed that we actually had to switch to every other week yard waste pickup for the vast majority of the collection season this year. So coming up with new programs that may require more staff is going to be a huge, huge challenge to try and help us get more of this stuff out of the trash. And then my biggest thing is, in our current electronic age of You know, you've got stories from the New York Times or CNN popping up on your phone every 5 minutes. When waste and recycling hits the national news, it's really difficult for the little local folks to put their hands up and say, hey, the stories you're hearing aren't exactly true for what's happening in our area. That, and then also our very, very short attention spans these days make it difficult for people to hang around to get the reason why X, Y, or Z can't be recycled or composted, to get that fun fact for them to actually internalize it. So no matter how many times we get the message out there that plastic bags shouldn't be going in recycling and how many ways we've done that, they're still the biggest problem with recycling. And there's so much plastic out there still that is a huge challenge. And until we can get those other visuals and get people beyond that, 7 seconds, we're probably going to continue on with that issue for a while. Going back to those county goals and the state, county, and city goals, Hennepin County did a waste sort of Minneapolis residential trash back in 2016. And the entire reason they did this study was to find out if in the residential sector, meeting the 75% recycled or composted was even feasible. And you can see here, 41% of what's in the trash has nowhere else to go other than the trash. The outcome of the study is we can hit 75% if 100% of people recycle or compost correctly 100% of the time. So in reality, it's not feasible. And that's the 75% goal. So the city's goal is even less feasible than the state. So going back into waste reduction and reuse, just some other fun facts here around the clothing industry and wasted food. If there's one thing we can do to help the planet and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, it's to make sure that the food you purchase is being eaten. Buying it and composting does not help us out. The amount of energy that goes into growing, transporting, processing, all of that food is so much more that if food waste was a country, it would have the 3rd largest greenhouse gas emissions of any country in the world. So a couple things if you take away today: no plastic bags and recycling, 125 plastics, no black plastics, eat the food you buy. So all of the tips of meal planning, having leftover days, all are very, very important to the overall goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And a fun thing on waste behavior, I kind of hinted at this, is we did a survey of residents in November 2020 to find out how people's behaviors had changed since COVID came to town. And we did see that people had increases in environmentally preferable behavior, from thinking if they actually needed things before they bought them, to increase in donating items, reusing items, doing the meal planning. I've got a whole 4-page document just on the results of that study if you want to see that. But it also led us to develop a campaign, and this is the first campaign since I've been at the city that wasn't around recycling or composting, but it was really a be aware of what you have, make sure that you are buying high quality durable items, you are repairing and loving the stuff you have, and then those things together will help us reduce waste. Note that because of the pandemic, we had zero funding to really do much with this campaign, so it was all done with free promotional channels that we had. But it was also really fun because for each different segment, and I will say we focused on plastics for a whole series, and then clothing and textiles, and then of course food. But our website had a whole bunch of links to all sorts of other information that may have been seen as controversial for a government to be posting. And it's the first time I think the city has done that in the past too, which was fun, and we didn't get in trouble for it. So yay. And then some of the other tools we have to, try and help us reduce waste, make sure materials are properly managed. The city has a multi-unit recycling ordinance. There's a commercial recycling ordinance and an event recycling ordinance, which they all need updating. And then green to go, the packaging or to-go packaging must be reusable, recyclable, or compostable, which I finally got it in the health department's ear that there are necessary changes to that. So the game plan immediately is that black plastics will soon be no longer considered acceptable for green to go. And hopefully, I think the game plan is to launch that in like Earth Day of 2023. So that announcement should be coming out pretty soon. Some other things that we want to look at, which is going to require opening that actual ordinance back up, would be to have restaurants only provide utensils and straws upon request, maybe even condiments, we'll see. And then the bring your own bag ordinance, that was the gift that just kept giving, because for those who you remember, we actually banned single-use plastic bags, but the state banned our ability to ban plastic bags the day before the ban went into effect. So we had to go all sorts of roundabout back and amend that to put a fee on all carryout bags. So now there is a fee on all paper and plastic carryout bags from stores. Yeah, and some things to watch for this coming session. The right to repair, so that is essentially would provide or require manufacturers of all of our electronics, farm equipment, etc., to make manuals available so that you can fix it yourself, or more independent agencies can open up businesses to do that, so you're not beholden to the company that made your item and pay their exorbitant fees to have it repaired. Compostable product labeling. Mentioned, I sit on the Minnesota Composting Council board. That would eliminate manufacturers to be able to sell things in the state that have those misleading terms like biodegradable, oxodegradable, made from plants, and they could only say they're compostable if they are actually a certified compostable item. And then there's a couple EPR bills. One, an EPR is extended producer responsibility. It essentially puts the cost of end-of-life management of products on the manufacturers of those items. One of which is mattresses, which has been raised a couple times, a couple sessions in the past. And then also one on packaging and printed paper. And there was one on packaging, and Steve, you might have to hop in. I don't know if it was actually packaging and printed paper, but there was an EPR bill for those types of items introduced last session. And after that, while that was introduced, Hennepin, Ramsey, Washington counties had formed a stakeholder group to develop a different one for the same things. That they're hoping to have introduced this upcoming session that will have hopefully a lot of support for it right off the bat. But backing up to mattresses really quick. So City of Minneapolis, I mentioned how many electronics we pick up. Each year we pick up over 36,000 mattresses, which costs it's like $1.2 million last year to have them recycled. At this point, it's actually costing us more to recycle those items than it would be to throw them away. But we obviously do not want them to be going in the trash, especially now that we have a recycling method for them, and about 85% of each mattress can be recycled into a new product. And I think that's, oh, nope. And then I can't leave out Hennepin County, because we at the city, everything we do in our office is funded by our ratepayers, so our customers' fees for service. So that being, 1 to 4 unit residential buildings, we don't have a lot of funding to do work outside of the residential sector. And Hennepin County takes on the lead for work and assistance for businesses, nonprofits, multi-unit schools, pretty much anyone and everyone. Their environmental partners program is probably my favorite. Oh, sorry, that should say Green Partners. Oh, it's right below. Green Partners grant is my favorite. Essentially, a nonprofit can have like a really fantastic idea that no one's ever thought of before. So long as the end game is behavior change, they can apply for a grant and hopefully receive funding from the county to actually start or implement any new project or idea they come up with. Another new-ish thing to the county is they've got their building reuse grants. So anyone doing renovations or full house demolitions, there's grant funding for homeowners, for contractors to salvage and deconstruct those types of items. And now they've incorporated into the grant program for people using reused building materials that you can get funding from the county to do that as well. So it's definitely not a we type thing, this whole waste system. It is an everyone type thing that's needed to help move us closer to those goals. From individual residents, city, county, the state, legislation, of course. So there's a lot there, and I tried to talk fast. I don't know where I'm at on my time, but I did it. That's all I had. But I'm happy to answer any questions or go into anything else you want to talk about. Like when some people walked in, I just learned a whole bunch of new stuff about the death industry and how much waste is in personal landfills of people being buried in coffins pumped with embalming fluid. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelly. We did get one question in the chat, and I was actually really excited to hear this. And I was going to ask you about the black plastic. So that means that like to-go containers will no longer be able to use black plastic?
Correct. So what'll happen is whenever the health department officially makes that change, I think they will be doing it soon. It's all going to come down to when they announce it. So if they announce it really soon, it might be effective January 1. However, they're never going to tell a restaurant if they have a supply of an item that they have to throw it away and they can't use it. They're going to tell them you use up what you have and then you have to buy something new. If they wait a couple weeks or months before they make any form of announce it, then it will probably be effective Earth Day, so April 22nd of 2023.
How do they enforce that? Like if
it is by complaint. So if you're at a restaurant that's given out foam to-go containers or soon to be black containers or any to-go containers that are a number 6 plastic, number 6 plastic is the same material that is foam, but it comes in a rigid form. So essentially if you get like a salad clamshell or it has a cold sandwich or something in it like that, those can be a number 6. Those are not allowed. Just call or email Minneapolis 311 and 311 will get it to the proper health inspector who then will follow up with the restaurant and make notes. So for every inspection they're on out, they're verifying the to-go packaging, it meets the green to-go ordinance.
Awesome. That's great to know. I didn't know we had that power. So that's.
Does a restaurant get fined if they're not in compliance?
They won't get fined right away, but if it's like a multiple repeat offense, then the health department does have the ability to fine them, yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
But yeah, I would encourage folks to go on the HERC tour. It's very interesting. It's also very fascinating that that one facility pulls out more metal, like I want to say it's like 60 to 80 times the amount of metal that's recycled in a curbside program every single year. Some before it gets burned and some after it gets burned.
Yeah. That would be awesome.
I have a question about the yard waste. So
Yeah.
the yard waste that's collected from us, what happens to it?
So the yard waste also goes to the same transfer station that the organics do, and they go out to, well, they could go to the Empire compost site or a different one. But the reason we keep them separate is kind of twofold. One, there's a much higher tipping fee for organics than there is for yard waste. And if the two streams were mixed together, we would pay that higher fee on everything. So keeping them separate is a cost savings for us, but then it also allows the composting facility to make their appropriate mix for their operations, so that they know, what the ratios are of greens to browns, and that they're making the different qualities of compost that they want to make.
So are you saying that the yard waste is also turned into compost?
Yep.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
I have a question. Talk about the finances of this process. I'm curious about how much money Hennepin County, how much income there is from the recycling, guessing that it's a net loss, but nonetheless, don't you get money for at least some of the recycling?
Yes, and so that's kind of goes back to like the national stories. So when news was coming out that China's not taking anyone's waste anymore or their recycling, our material, being that we're in the middle of the continent, it never made sense for us to ship stuff to a port to get it to go overseas when we could ship it directly to a recycler. So our material was never going overseas, but it's a simple supply and demand. So as all of the supply is staying within the US now, the price is tanked. And at that point, we were paying more for recycling, but it was still less than the cost of treating that same material as trash. Plus, there's all of the jobs, the economic benefits, the environmental benefits that come along with recycling as well. So it's actually been probably about 2.5 years since we've had to pay more for recycling. So we've been getting revenue checks back from Eureka for the sale of recyclables for about 2.5 years. And so the pandemic, with the supply demand on things like toilet paper, made paper prices go up. With the war in Ukraine and Russia, metal prices have gone up. Just like the stock market goes like this, the same thing happens with recycling market. So I just saw something yesterday that plastic prices are dropping a lot right now. So it's kind of a hit or miss on what's going to be the one making you the money versus not. The one material stream that we pretty much will never ever make money on is glass, because it's so heavy and it gets so dirty in the sorting process that it has to go to another facility to get cleaned. But glass is like the poster child of recycling. It's also inert. It can forever be made back into a glass bottle. So it's not going anywhere, but there are many communities around the country that stopped accepting glass back when markets were bad, mostly because they don't have any local infrastructure for cleaning and processing and using that glass. So we're very fortunate. The glass cleanup place is just in St. Paul, like a whole 4 miles from Eureka Recycling, and then all of our clear glass goes straight down to Anchor Glass and Shakopee, where they make it back into new bottles and jars. And a lot of the blue and green, there's not enough blue and green, so it's not ever made back into bottles and jars. But they grind it into a fine powder, and then that's either used for sandblasting medium, or it is turned into fiberglass insulation. And then the amber, sorry, so again, cut me off whenever, I can talk forever. The amber, there's a significant amount of it, but years and years ago, Anchor stopped using one of their furnaces for amber. They call it cullet when it's all fragmented into small pieces. So right now, our amber is either being shipped far away to be turned back into new glass and bottles, or it's going also into fiberglass insulation. And one of the things a couple of folks and I have been trying to do is encourage the Minnesota Brewers Guild to get all of the microbreweries to put pressure on Anchor Glass and say, we will buy all of our growlers from you if you turn a furnace back over to using amber glass. It's not going well, but we're still trying.
Thank you.
Kelly, you mentioned that the Minneapolis has a recycling ordinance for events.
Yes.
What is it? Because we hold events sometimes.
Let's see. Well, no, it needs a lot of updating. Although we also need more staff because we don't have a great ability to do some of the follow-up that is in the ordinance. So it's essentially any parade or race must have one-to-one garbage and recycling and a dumpster for cardboard if they need it, which I will tell you, most races with their crates and crates of bananas and things, they probably all need a dumpster for cardboard. And then for large block events, they're also required to have the same thing, one-to-one garbage to recycling. They're encouraged to do zero waste events and have organics, but since the ordinance says one-to-one garbage to recycling, even if you are a zero waste event, you then would need garbage recycling and organics. But that's kind of where we look away a little bit for events that are really well managed, like Rock the Garden and the Basilica Block Party, where they're controlled entrances and they've got staff who actually like sort through the stuff at the back end. We're not going to tell them you have to have a garbage next to every recycling or organics container. But the biggest issue I see with the event recycling ordinance is that the threshold for a large block event is 2,500 attendees per day. Like, you would think an event that has, like, I don't know, 200 people should maybe be required to have recycling. So that's it's an item in the zero waste plan and the zero waste action plan to evaluate that threshold. So that it can be brought down so there's recycling available at more of these bigger community events.
Okay.
Steve.
Hi, Kelly. I have a question about Target Field. You know, they have two containers, one for organics and one for recyclables. And I look at them because I'm interested in that sort of thing. When I'm doing a game, I see contamination in each one of them.
Yep.
I wonder about, about the organics situation. I mean, do they have to screen through that when they take it to the organic sites?
So Target Field is kind of a special case because I don't know if they still do this, but they used to pay someone like $2 more an hour to sort through the bags at the dumpsters out back of the stadium. I don't know where it was. I think it was probably US Bank Stadium, but anytime a load goes down to the compost site, they do inspections of the load overall. And if they see like 5% contamination, which can be as simple as like 3 bags of stuff that shouldn't be there, they will reject the entire load or try to scoop out as much as they can of what shouldn't be there. So commercial loads are significantly more contaminated than the residential material, which is really interesting because when Hennepin County started working with businesses to roll out organics, they started with businesses because they said, oh, it has to be easier to train these 15 people that work at this business than the general public. But that's not how it's being seen. St. Louis Parks organics program has like a 2% contamination. Richfield's is at like 4%, and they just rolled theirs out like 2 years ago now. I think Edina's in about the same boat. So yeah, so the commercial loads are much more contaminated. They're more likely to be rejected at a compost site than the residential material. And they are checking, both SET and SMSC are checking every load that gets dropped at the compost site. And it's very expensive when it gets rejected because then they have to pay to reload it all, and then they have to pay a transfer fee, and then they have to pay the landfilling fees. So it's no good. But we also don't want microplastics or glass in the compost.
Kelly, I have another question, which is, I'm wondering, is there an effort to try to get all of the communities in the metro area to walk the same process?
Well,
same,
like what's recyclable or what's compostable?
Yeah, and how
yeah,
it's all done, etc.
It is all the same. Essentially so all of the metro counties all used to get together and form messaging. Now that that organization has kind of disbanded, there is still an effort. It's called the Recycling Education Committee. We call it REC for short, but it's representatives from cities, counties, the state. It's got haulers on it. MRFs or recycling sorting facilities sit there too. And the ultimate goal is, you know, what one says should be the same for everyone in the Twin Cities. So I think the tricky thing is for haulers, especially for labels on bins, if they have a bin out there, they're probably not going to send people out there to re-sticker it. So there still may be some containers out there that have stickers on them with things that are not accurate. But all of the same material types are accepted for recycling throughout the metro region.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have one question about diapers. I know they're not compostable. Do you ever see that being something in the future? Do you have any discussions about that?
So we get the questions about pet waste and diapers all the time. And I mean, yes, the poo will compost very well, but as far as the composting facilities are concerned, odors have shut down compost sites across the world. And once you open the floodgates to something like that, you have no idea what to expect. So they would also have to get special permission from the state to accept anything that has fecal matter in it. And diapers, it's going to be really hard because the adhesives and the, like, what's the word? Yeah, what are the Velcro-y things? And all of that are, there was one composter who was doing in vessel or like an enclosed composting system that had a demonstration research project permit to take them from one company, but they also have stopped doing that. So I don't know about diapers and pet waste in the next like 5-10 years. I think there's a lot of other hurdles we need to get over, one of which is just capacity for increased processing of organics as a whole, which is why Hennepin and Ramsey, Washington counties are all looking at anaerobic digestion as the easiest way to increase that capacity. But also, here's a fun fact. Another thing compost sites can't take are dead animals. The state cannot tell me when a rotisserie chicken carcass or a filleted fish is different than a squirrel. That's all I'm going to say. All I'm going to say, people could eat a squirrel. Just saying. House pet, sure. I'm sure you don't want to put a house pet in the organics. Don't want to go hunting and bring a deer carcass back. I get that. But like a dead squirrel, come on.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Although I'm guessing, honestly, the urban squirrels probably have so much plastic in their stomachs, though, from chewing through all the bin lids that. There you go. There's my new answer. No dead squirrels because they've died from plastic ingestion.
Very interesting. Thank you so much, Kelly. It's been super informative. Really appreciate you joining. I certainly learned a lot. And
yay. All right, well, I will throw my email in the chat and I will email you the presentation. So if you want to share it out to folks, that's totally fine. And people feel free to reach out if you have any other questions.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Before we sign off, I did just want to give a plug for next month's meeting. We will have Carissa Patron speaking about project drawdown updates. And we'll also have Mary Britton giving an update on her neighborhood's 25% by 2025. And we're going from there. So join us on October 13th. It'll be a Thursday again at 6:30. And we are also looking for short talks for November. So if you have a topic you're interested in presenting on for 4 to 7 minutes, we'd love to hear from you. So please reach out if that's something you're interested in. Well, thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Hope to see you next month.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.